Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well today so far. So that was certainly a very interesting Q&A that we just experienced. I, for one, am still very confused as the reason why they decided to do it via Discord and not their YouTube channel, but what's done is done, and we have gotten a lot of very interesting and fun answers to some of the questions that were levied at the studio and developers. It has been a very stressful day for me so far with this video, and I am compiling together everything that I personally took from the Q&A, and I'm not going to make this an overinflated video breaking down the questions in an essay-style format. I'm just going to speak on what I could gather with importance from each of the 16 questions that we did get. So, with that all being said, I would kindly ask for you all to comment down below all your thoughts on this Q&A as we get into the video, and like the video if you also enjoy the Q&A, and if you didn't, be sure to let me know and we'll have a conversation about it in the comments. So let's basically run through all the 16 questions, starting with the first one, which was around properties and houses that you can purchase within the cities that you explore. This is actually a very good question to ask, because one of the things that a lot of people are definitely wondering is how does the living of your player work inside of the areas of which that you are allowed to go to. This one specifically just happens to do with cities. There is housing in different cities that a player can get. Some you have to purchase and some you get rewards for from specific quests. A meal teased something bigger for completion, and so this gets me thinking that there's really going to be a lot more to this than what we were given here. I actually really do like the fact that in order to get this, you have to do it by either purchasing or getting a reward for completing a challenge. I like that it's giving you multiple options to go about it depending on your playstyle. So that was a neat and interesting thing to know, and I'm glad that we got a good answer on it. The second question dealt with one of the traits in the game, which is around kids and their parents. It was simply asked if the parents that the player would have would resemble you as you had created from your character. Simply put, the answer was yes. There is going to be some form of realism to this, in a sense that your parents might just look somewhat similar to the character that you created, which I think is very fascinating. I wouldn't say that this is like the biggest deal in the world, I just think that it's something fun to think on when using this trait in the game. Moving on over to question 3. I actually really like this one because I'm someone who has never fully played or even really started up a Bethesda game before. I actually have an original copy of Fallout 4 that I have yet to unseal from the plastic wrap that you get it in when you buy it on physical. I had gotten that game for Christmas, and for some reason I just never bothered to open it, so that might be something worth a lot of money in the future, so who knows. But I'm glad that they did answer it in a way to where they basically said that everyone is going to be on the same wavelength when they play the game, so no one person is going to be out of touch. The next question dealt with the idea of how you would go about illegal activities of smuggling and stealing, and again, the attention to detail with this answer is something to be desired. Certain items are considered contraband, and you'll need to smuggle them past security ships that are in orbit of major settlements. You can hide them using special ship modules you can purchase. The economy is fixed, but prices of bought and sold goods can change based on the skills you choose. So basically an answer that justifies the notion that you have to be really careful with a lot of the decisions that you make inside of the game. I think this is something that's going to really make players heavily focused, which I think can be a good thing for retention and wanting to keep playing if you get yourself in a sticky situation. Funny enough, that actually led into the next question, which was about if they would be implementing a jail system, and I love how the developers were straight with the answer in saying that basically you have to follow rules inside of the game. The universe of Starfield is also predicated on the systems we see in real life with the law and being able to do things the right way and not get in trouble. You can either resist and escape, or you can go to jail and suffer the consequences and pay to get yourself out. So that's just a really cool answer that I really liked that they gave. So the next question was very small in the sense that the game will not be running for you when you are not actively playing it. There are some games out there that exist that do this kind of thing, but Starfield will not be one of them, and I don't personally mind this because I feel like, again, this is giving you, the player, the ability to make all the decisions yourself and run things on your own terms. The next question deals with something that I think a lot of people were wondering, which is how much involvement will you have with all the different factions inside of the game, whether it's Constellation, Freestar Collective, or the United Colonies, and the developers basically said that it will be an intermingling relationship. There are some quest lines you can choose in order to be a double agent and kind of spy your way through some factions. I think it's pretty neat, and I think it makes sense that they would allow for this. I don't think it would have been a good idea if you were just only allowed to be a part of one faction and have no involvement with any any of the other ones. The next question deals with the idea of basically inside of the game. We all obviously experienced this before, but usually when you play a game that has a story mode, there are bound to be multiple different difficulties, whether it is beginner, intermediate, expert, or maybe even an impossible mode. Someone asked if there would be a pacifist difficulty where you would go through the game not killing anyone, and I find this question confusing but also interesting at the same time, because I feel like one of the goals of this game would be that you are going to be required to do some killing at some point. I feel like the game would be pretty boring and stale if you weren't involving yourself in violence or action, but maybe that's just me. But listen, some people just like that kind of thing, and I'm not gonna dog on it. The next question I found to be fascinating from the point of view of how much the developers talked about it, but for me personally, it was something that I wasn't totally interested in, and that was around the idea of the basic beliefs and religious tones of the world of Starfield. This was a question that the developers put a lot of detail into, and it honestly is something that I have to look more into, but it is clear that there is a lot of lore inside of the universe based on a lot of the things that we see in real life that are implemented into this game, but might be changed up a little bit. They really did put a lot of information into all the different religions and how this universe is looked upon by the people who live inside of it, which again, I think is necessary for a game because it gives the game more of an atmosphere to it. Again, this is something I need to look more into, but I found it funny how much effort they did put into the answer. I'm also not really the most religious person in real life anyway, so I guess that's just another reason why I wasn't that fascinated by what they were talking about. The next several questions were actually pretty fun and all related to your companions and crew that can follow you around or be utilized for your ship. You can recruit 20 named characters to join your crew. Most of them are mainly focused on Constellation and have the most story interaction with your player. The devs also teases that a big list of voice actors who do good work with these companions will be shown soon when the game drops, so I'm definitely curious to know who is going to be on that list. Someone asked if there's a pay system for your companions as well. You'll only have to pay them once, a one-time payment kind of thing. There is a lot to do in Starfield, and the devs wanted the player to minimize how much they had to keep track of, which honestly is fair. I mean, this game is just going to be massive, and I think that that's a really good point to make. This also kind of reminds me of GTA 5, where if you have played the game, you'll know that every day you basically have to pay a bunch of people who have done services for you, like your mechanic, insurance, or even something like your organization staff, which was one of the newer updates to GTA 5 in the last several years. The only difference, though, is in Starfield, it is a one-time thing, like I said. All crews start with a set of perks in specific ranks. They don't level up, but they become different ranks depending on the companion. Each member of the crew will have specific skill sets and things that they have to do when you are assigning them. You'll really be able to feel the benefit of your ship with how it runs when you assign them to do things. Again, this is just something so fascinating and fun to look at. This part of the Q&A really made me feel like they are trying to get you to act like a captain of a starship from Star Trek or something like that. In Star Trek, one of the main components of the crew is that everyone has a different job, and it looks like they are really focusing in on that here with this. The next two questions were not really the most important ones in the world in my mind, although the second one had a lot more interest to it than the first one did. The devs talked about their favorite parts of what they're looking forward to the most in the game, and then they also gave some inspirations of their own with what they're putting into the game from other science fiction. Will said that he was inspired by different history podcasts that he would listen to, and Emil was inspired by Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Space 1999, Buck Rogers, Battle Beyond the Stars, and Ice Pirates, and a few others, namely Interstellar, which is really big for me. Both Star Wars and Interstellar are great because I love both with my heart. I don't know some of these other franchises that he listed because I haven't seen any of them, but one of them that he did mention was Event Horizon, which is a space horror film. So I like that one too if you've seen the film. That could be a hint as to a potential aspect of the game that revolves around horror, so I would actually really be curious to know how much of that comes to fruition. The next two questions were also a little smaller. The first one had to do with these small details that will get you more immersed into the game. It is a very lived-in universe, and you can see it everywhere. Everything ties to NASA Punk, which is their term to describe attention to detail for the game. Outfits play a big deal into the immersion. You'll have patches on your suits that are tied to the skills you have. There is a lot of attention to detail based on the level designers and what they did with the environment. Again, not the most important answer in the world, but it is nice to know again how much they are putting into making it feel very lived in. Now, the last question actually has to do with something that, again, I'm not too familiar with, so I apologize, but it has to do with the mechs inside of the game. They showed this off in the animated shorts, which I actually have to go and watch because that, again, was another thing that I really liked that they did. It just adds to the lore of the universe. The mechs are leftovers from the Colony War, something that was mentioned in the lore timeline reveal the other day with regards to the year that they took place in. Both sides, United Colonies and Freestar Collective, had mechs. Alien beasts were also used at some point for them as well. That's also just another really cool tidbit of information that they gave with regards to, again, looking on the lore of these things. Emil also said that the mechs in the game are not usable but are in the ruins as like an old fossil, I guess, if you wanted to look at it that way. So again, my apologies for that question because I need to go watch those shorts and I need to read up more on these mechs. That was pretty much all that we did get from the Q&A. Again, this was not the biggest thing in the world, but I think it gave us some news that was really fun to glean from. I think some of the stuff they talk about was more important and some of the stuff was not the most important thing in the world, but still, it's just a fun thing to get an answer for. I do expect that they are saving a lot more information for when we do get the Gamescom preview at the end of the month, so here's hoping that that will be the case. I, unfortunately, from the looks of it, will probably actually not be around for that preview. My 12-day vacation in Europe actually ends around the 28th, which might be after the showcase takes place. So I also recognize that I will probably not have the ability to record anything over the trip, and I certainly don't want to force myself to do so. So in that case, you know, it's totally fine to just watch and listen with what they say when it goes live. I'll definitely try to be sure to try and make a video when I get back from vacation to give my thoughts on it. Other than that, I will have a bunch of videos that I will have made in advance that will come out while I'm away. So I would really appreciate if you all could stay tuned for those when they do release. So I've got nothing more to really say though, so I hope you all enjoyed the video. Give it a like if you enjoyed with what I had to say and if you had fun with the Q&A. Also be sure to subscribe if you are new here and looking forward to more Starfield. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and I'll be sure to be talking to you all very soon when I can. This is Orion, signing out.